Welcome to our UI5 session, Being Nice to Hackers, Building Insecure UI5 Applications. Today I will not show you how to secure an application against attacks, but I will show you how to change an application so that attacks are possible. Have you ever tried hacking a UI5 based application? It shouldn't be that easy, because we try our best to make them secure, but the developer has to follow some standard procedures in order to get it secure. That was my cat, just ignore her. Well, as UI5 is an open JavaScript-based framework, all the problems with JavaScript development theoretically also apply to UI5. You can make the same mistakes. And since you're perfectly free to implement your own controls, you can just write your own code and put in all the things that you do not want to have in that application. So we will now focus on the application itself, and I will take over the role of my evil twin. I have this application here, which you can see, and I'm the new developer. So I now want to add some problematic code in there so that someone else can break into it. I've been paid by some evil corporation to make this software hackable. So as you can see here, we have a small application. There's a master list on the left side. Some details here on the right side. As you can see here, there's a little delete icon, and here's a little item where you can add a new product. So let's see, if I add a product, say okay, I want it to be a draft, then you can see here that the draft is entered here, and it's also entered on top in the URL. So let's see if we can work with that. What if we enter test? You can see that the type and the basic infos also changes. See? So maybe we can use that. So if I want to enter something bad, like script tag, let's say you have been hacked. Does that work? No, because the router does not recognize this as a root. So first of all, I have to change the router. I can find the roots in the component.js here, and this seems to be the correct root. And what I do now is I add another root, which is basically the same, but I tell the router to accept everything as a parameter for the type. I also name it something else, because every root has to have its own name. So let's see if that already worked. There's my application, but it's not directly inserted into the HTML. Maybe because I forgot to close the quotes right here, double quotes, and then I have to, of course, add another tag right here. Does that help? No, it doesn't. So the application developers did it right. They escaped the values. So let's see. This is a field. It's pre-filled, so that should be a custom control. Let's see, there is a pre-filled input, and just as I suspected, there's a write escaped instead of a write, but we don't want them to escape that because then we couldn't use it. Let's go back, try again. That kind of worked. Let's see why not. In the elements, there's my input field. There's my test. Oh, I didn't close the field, of course. So now it should work, and yes, we have been hacked. Okay, So our first attack against this application worked. We just had to remove the escaping in the renderer. So what else can we do here? There's also the product name field. And if I type something in here, like for example, test name, then you can see the title here has changed. So every time I put something in here, it is also changed up here. Well, that is a pretty useless feature, but I guess we can use that. Let's try. So if I enter a script, maybe it's executed. No, it's not. Why isn't it executed? Well, let's see. So this is the product name field. This is the title. Let's look at the field itself. It's in the add product view, somewhere down here. Oh, and there I see. This is an input field. It is bound to a path in the model, but also there's a type. And this type says it's a string and it has constraints. These constraints are just a regular expression, but it basically says here that the string can only contain the letters A to Z, upper and lowercase, digits 0 through 9, and then a space and a dot. I do not want that. I just want to enter any string. So if I remove this, then I can enter any string right here in the field. So let's try again. Well, it kind of worked. We could enter the string with a script, but it was escaped. But we already know how to change that. We just have the title control here. Did I mix spaces and tabs here? I guess I did. So let's just change that real quick. I always use 4. So there it is. And as we can see here, it's just like before, write escaped instead of write. So we change that, and now we should be good to go. Now we should be able to put our code into the application. Let's see. That didn't work. Why didn't that work? We removed the escaping in the renderer, but still it's escaped. Well, the developers did their homework and they optimized the control so that it doesn't re-render every time the property or the two properties, text and second text, are set. So they overrode the setters for those two properties and then used the underscore output text method to change the text. And in this one, without re-rendering, they just write the text out to the DOM object, and they use jQuery SAP encode HTML, which does escaping just like the write escaped. And if we remove that, then we should be finally able to get our code working. So let's see. Didn't work? Yes, it did. But we entered a script tag. And if we look into the elements in the page, then we can see there it is, our script tag. It just hasn't been executed because a script tag that is added to the page is not immediately executed. That is just how the browser handles it. So we have to be a little smarter. We just use an image tag and say on error, you have been hacked. And if I do that, an empty source attribute, and then you have been hacked, because now it tries to load whatever is in the source attribute, which is nothing. So since it cannot load anything from nothing, an error occurs, and whatever is put here in the on error is then executed directly. So we could hack into that. Nice. Okay, so what is next? I see a logo up there, and here's a URL. So what if you want to change that? Does that work? So let's see. Now let's search for something ugly that we can use here. Let's use this guy here. Let's see if we can get him into our application. Nope, doesn't work. Why not? Well, maybe the developers used a whitelist. As you can see here, they used jQuery SAP add URL whitelist to add sap.com to the whitelist, and then later on they just check if this is a valid URL. So if the URL is in the whitelist, in this case if it is on sap.com, it is allowed. Let's just remove this and then we can set the URL, I hope. So let's see if that works. I still have my ugly URL here. And there it is. We have changed the picture. Oh, but that isn't enough, right? We do not just want to add some strange picture. We also want to add code. So let's see if we can say onload equals alert you have been hacked. Of course, we will have to end the double quotes here as well. And let's see. No, it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Let's look in the console. And as I can see here, our URL, onload alert you have been hacked, is of type string, expected SAP UI custom HTTP URI. So they used type checking in the property. Let's see where that is. Oh, right here. So we remove the property check. Again, we say it should just be any string in this case and not a URI. And now we should be able to add the ugly picture as well as our code. Let's see. So there it is. Let's add it. Well, still nothing. Why not? The same thing every time. They of course escaped the URL. So remove the right escaped. I should have learned that by now because they did it every time just like they should. So again, reload, try that again. And there we go, our ugly image, and we have injected code. So that's basically all we wanted. You can see down here, they have a rich text editor. We want to use that rich text editor. So let's take a look at the whole application again. Every time you click on an item, here's a description of the item. So if we enter something here, some description with markup like this, let's just try it out, add a release date, a price, a rating, and we save that, and we can see here the markup has been added to the product description. This basically means they are showing HTML there. Maybe we can use that to add a little script code as well. So okay, let's add a new product where we can change the description to something with evil code in there. So I add some source code right in the description. I add an image, which is then, like before, not loaded, and the error message or the error script is executed. Well, doesn't work. Why? Did I type it correctly? Well, it's gone. As you can see here, there's only the image tag, there's a new alt attribute, but our empty source and the onError attribute has been removed. This is actually done in the third-party component that is used here. It's the TinyMCE Editor. And if I take a look into the code in the add product controller, then I can add an exception here. I add some lines of code where I tell the underlying third-party component that it should allow more elements here. Namely, an image element with a source, an unload, and an onError attribute. So, let's try that. Back to our application. Reload. So, now I can enter my image, and this time I will add a little sugar to that, because I will use a data URI which has a transparent GIF image in there, because this means that in no browser there will be a broken image symbol in the text anywhere. It will just be a small 1 pixel transparent image which nobody will see. And I use onLoad instead of onError because this one will be loaded because it always works. Let's see. I say OK, and there it is. You have been hacked. But this is not enough, right? We want to save that to the backend so that everyone who visits the page and goes into our product gets also our code injected. Well, if you think about it, it doesn't sound that realistic, because the code is usually validated on the backend. But think of a banking website where you have a secure backend which can never be hacked into, which handles the financial transactions, and another backend which is not that secure, where, for example, the advertisements and the current products are stored in the database, and these are shown to the logged in user on the web page. So if we manage to hack into that second backend and inject our code there, then we can send that code to the front end, and the logged in user can then be used by our code to start financial transactions on the first backend, even though that is secure. So do not even trust the backend. If you have the chance, also validate all values that come from the backend. So let's see. Let's do it again. You have been hacked. Yeah, I didn't have to do that again. Okay, let's just enter this product. Again, we add a release date and a price, and rating. We say save. And it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Well, the developers again did their homework, because they used an HTML control, and the HTML control is basically the most evil control in the UI5 library. Let me just show you that. Let's go to the UI5 demo kit. Let's look at the API reference, and there we can see that the HTML control right here, let's make that a little bigger, has a warning in there, security, and by default the HTML content is not sanitized and therefore open to XSS attacks. So you have to set sanitized content to true, and this is exactly what the developers of this application did. So let's take a look in the detail view, and there we can see Here's the HTML content, and there it is. Sanitized content is true, and we can just remove that, and then the default value false works just like we want it to. For our demo app, we don't really have a backend, so I have to enter the product again. Let's see. Test, adding the code. There it is. It works. And then we save it. Did that work? Let's try again. Fruit Punch, DVD player, test. You have been hacked. So there it is. Last but not least, I want to show you something else. So, what do I want you to do? I want you to find the eggs and click on them. Why? Because I want to give you $1,000. Well, not really. As you can see here, I added a little slider up there. And what did we do here? Well, we put an image in front of our application, and with the slider we can make it transparent. Well, no, it's the other way around, of course. The application is up front and the image is actually in the back. So basically, if I slide it down here so that you cannot see the application, it is still there. And the important thing is I cannot click on it because the developers of the application added the frame options option to the UI5 bootstrap, and they said deny. And if I set this to allow right here, what I can do then is I can click on anything here. And let me just show you what happens if I click on the 3 eggs by making it more transparent. What I would do is first select a product, then, well, select category, and last but not least, delete that product. See? Here, here, here. And the product is gone. And of course, that could also be a financial transaction. What should you take from this session? Well, the first one is do not trust any input that comes from outside your application, like, for example, from the URL. Do not trust the user, because as we saw, the user can type in anything, basically. The third thing is do not trust the front end, which should be obvious from the second one, do not trust the user, because if you cannot trust the user can circumvent the front end at any time, just like I did by opening up the developer tools. Then I can just send anything to the server, and if it's not validated there, then I can attack it. And last but not least, as we saw, even do not trust the backend. We had this example with the code that was saved on the backend and then injected into our application with the HTML control. So basically, trust no one if you don't have to. Almost every attack on browsers comes from a string containing some kind of code. So the general rule here is escape everything. Even non-code can be problematic for your application. Imagine, for example, someone entering an image URL that points to another server. Then the owner of that server knows a lot about your users. They know when they use the application, which parts of the application they use, and even what browser they use. And if they manage to catch a user who uses an outdated browser with security holes in it, then they can use that information, and instead of serving an image, they can serve something that uses this security hole in the browser. So even escape URLs that are just pointing to some image on the web. Well, last but not least, read the documentation. We have a great documentation about UI5 security in our demo kit in the developer guide. There's a whole chapter on securing UI5 applications. Make sure you read that, all the sub-chapters, and when you're finished with that, read it again. And I mean that. It's just like with my camera's manual, I read it every year. And even though I know I have read every single passage over and over, every year I find something new there. And with our security guide, we add new information, so make sure to visit it over and over, basically. Okay. I hope you liked this little presentation, and, well, see you next time.